Welcome back to the show. Now it is time for my first official and only mock draft, NFL mock draft for this offseason. I've waited till the day of the first round to drop it, gain all the information, and talk about it, and really be convinced with what I think is going to happen in the entirety of the first round. I'll go through picks 1 through 16 in this segment, and then I'll take a break, and we'll come back with the back end of the first round. So, without further ado, let's just go right into it. Number 1, Caleb Williams. It would be minus 20,000 on betting sites by this point. It's all everyone's been talking about with the Bears. That's a no-brainer. Obviously, the number 1 overall pick at this point. Number 2, we go with the Commanders. A lot has been said. I've mentioned a lot already about what they're going to do, trading, what they like, Jaden Daniels, what are his feelings about it. But with that being said, I think Jaden Daniels just is the pick here for me. It's so tough because I wanted to go sneakily with Drake May because of what he said around the meeting that they had on their top 30 visit. Quite the opposite feeling that Jaden Daniels had. Drake May, as opposed to Daniels, who wasn't too sure about it. Drake May said he thought it was one of the coolest visits that he's been on. And I'm sure if you're the Commanders, that's the sort of reaction you want to get from your future quarterback potentially. But I just think Jaden Daniels, his talent, coming off of a Heisman winning season, the ability to run and throw the ball as well, I think it's too good to pass up here. And if it wasn't Washington at number 2, I would think Las Vegas would trade, but that's too expensive. So the Commanders get their quarterback in Jaden Daniels. Then number 3 falls perfectly for Drake May and the New England Patriots. The Patriots have Jacoby Brissett as an insurance for Drake May. They don't have to throw him into the fire right away in a tough market nonetheless, with how the standard has been set, how the fans expect the Patriots to play. They don't have to put that pressure on Drake May right away. Help him develop a year, maybe however long it takes. Robert Kraft, to me, the biggest point was that at some point this offseason, Robert Kraft has said that he would want to get one of the young top quarterbacks in the draft, or at some point in this offseason, he didn't actually say the draft. He might as well have said the draft. He said he wanted a young top quarterback at some point this offseason. Saying draft without actually saying go draft one. That's what Robert Kraft said. So they follow that influence, take Drake May here, and move on. So now at number 4, the Arizona Cardinals. Again, not as obvious as Caleb Williams because they could trade out and trade down and accumulate more draft picks, but I think they stay put. Marvin Harrison is too good of a talent to ever think you're going to be in this situation again with the top wide receiver at number 4. Generational type of talent. It has become closer with him and Malik Neighbors, but you can't go wrong with either one of them. I think he might be more ready to play day one than Malik Neighbors up to this point. He needed to get the best, or the Cardinals need to get the best out of Kyler Murray, so they bring him one of the best wide receivers that the NFL has seen coming out of the draft in a long time. Moving on to number 5. This is where my first trade of the first round comes into effect. I was very adamant on the Vikings and J.J. McCarthy, so this is what they go out and do. At number 5, the Chargers trade out of that number 5 spot, receive the Vikings number 11 and 23 overall pick, and maybe a first or a second round again in 2025. The details will be worked out, but not to just drown too much in those details. Regardless, the Vikings trade up to number 5 and they get their quarterback. JJ falls to them. Reasonable for Minnesota now that it is past the top 4. JJ talking so highly of Kevin talking so highly of their next quarterback, being from the Midwest, and how it all just seems to be coming together at this point, basically on the day of the NFL draft. It makes too much sense here for the Vikings not to get the quarterback, and it would be a big help in trying to re-sign Justin Jefferson because I think he would feel better about a young, good quarterback just winning the national championship, coming in to be his quarterback to ease the contract negotiations and be more appealing to him to stay with the team. So the Vikings trade up. They make a move for the quarterback at number 5. Number 6, the New York Giants. They could trade up. I mentioned Michael Penix, what my feelings are about it, what's been said about him. But again, you get too much more from drafting Malik Neighbors, which I have being the pick here, than you would of drafting any quarterback. I don't care if it's Caleb Williams at number 6. If he's there, don't take him. You take Malik Neighbors because you can get the most out of Neighbors right away than you could get out of any quarterback. You're either going to have an expensive quarterback sitting on your bench, or you're going to start the expensive quarterback and your first round draft pick is on your bench and you're not getting anything really out of him. I think Neighbors can come in and maybe help Daniel Jones out. Daniel Jones had that one good season in 2022. They made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. Bringing in someone that could really help him, one of the best receivers again out of LSU, coming out of LSU. There's just something about these receivers that you really can't pass up on. You look at Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Brian Thomas even as well in this draft. There's something in the water over there in LSU. It makes too much sense. History is on the side here for the Giants. Get the wide receiver and really see what you have in Daniel Jones before you cut ties and move on from him next year. That is the number 6 overall pick. Then the Titans, one of the easiest picks. I think they go with Joe Alt, the presumed number 1 offensive tackle in this draft, addressing one of their biggest needs on the offensive line at the offensive tackle position, and it helps tremendously with Will Levis and his projection and his growth going forward. They got him the weapons that he needs, DeAndre Hopkins. They signed Calvin Ridley also. They want to go as a more spread, modernized offense with Brian Callahan. You have the weapons, now you need the protection to help Will Levis do that. They go ahead and get Joe Alt here. Then at number 8, the Atlanta Falcons, another obvious pick. They draft Dallas Turner. This has to be, if Caleb Williams was minus 2,000, this has to be minus 10,000. Because the Atlanta Falcons are so great and have a lot of potential on offense, they have to address defense. Raheem Morris was a defensive coach. I'm sure he is dying to get some more pass rushers in there. I think edge would be the most logical move here. Dallas Turner, presumably the consensus is that he is the best edge rusher out of the group. I believe that as well. And they just desperately need edge rushers because their sack numbers have been horrendous over the last few years. This makes too much sense for the Falcons, so they go out and get Dallas Turner. Then at number 9, a lot has been said about the Bears moving on, trading back from this pick. I don't think it works out for them to really move them away from this player I have them selecting. Rome Odunze, any trade that comes through, I don't think it would benefit them too much defensively or offensively if they just move back a few spots and get an offensive tackle or something like that. Rome Odunze is or would be the number 1 wide receiver in any other draft class recently or in the future. He is that good. And you're not going to get another real wide receiver class like this that has 3 1A, 1B, and 1C wide receivers. The Chicago Bears go out and get another weapon for Caleb Williams. And on top of everything, I've seen these two on social media interacting with each other like they know something, like they're already teammates. Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze were on the same flight to Detroit. Caleb Williams tweeting at Rome Odunze like, "Oh my God, I'm on the same flight as Rome Odunze." Rome Odunze replying to it, going back to the question he was asked at the Combine, saying that he was actually the pilot for the flight, making a joke of it all because he was asked about it at the Combine. These two seem to be very friendly with each other for two guys that have never played together and that have been connected this whole time. I think there's something there. I think they know something's there. Maybe they've gotten guarantees from the Bears that they're going to be drafted together. I think that's the pick. I think Maradiegue goes to the Chicago Bears. And then the New York Jets, I talked about it yesterday. Brock Bowers is the pick here. Unquestionable top 10 talent for me. He has to go in the top 10. It makes too much sense. The Jets need immediate results, and Rodgers will surely be in favor of bringing in a guy that has been touted as one of the best tight ends to come out of the draft recently. And like I said, they're in win now mode. They've done everything to suggest they're trying to win this year, and to forget about whatever happens next. They need to win this year. Brock Bowers certainly helps them do that. He could play in a week or two if they needed him to. I think he's that good. So the New York Jets get him at 10. Then moving on to number 11, the Chargers with that trade with the Minnesota Vikings to acquire their 2 first-round picks. They go offensive line here. They go with Talise Fuaga, the offensive tackle from Oregon State. General Manager Joe Ortiz, Jim Harbaugh have all been all about the offensive line, the toughness, the grittiness, the reliance, being reliable. And I think Talise Fuaga has been that. Over the draft process, pre-draft process, he has slowly grown on a lot of teams. I think they have him very highly rated in this year's draft. And the only thing that separates him from Troy Fautanu, I think Troy Fautanu isn't really an offensive tackle naturally. Talise Fuaga is bigger than him, and there has been questions about Fautanu playing guard because of his size. So because of that, the Chargers trying to establish this mean, in-your-face culture, I'm going with Talise Fuaga here for the Chargers. Then my second trade of the NFL draft in the first round, I have the Broncos trading that number 12 pick like I've talked about, but it does fall to the Philadelphia Eagles for their number 22 overall pick, and maybe one or potentially both of their second round picks because they have 2 in the 50 range of this year's draft in the second round. I think the Broncos could really make a case here. If Philadelphia really wants to move up, I'm asking for that number 22 and both of their second round picks. But the details will be worked out if this trade does happen. I think the Eagles really want one of these top defensive backs, and that's who I have them selecting by trading up in the first round. They go with Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo. 1A and 1B for me with Terrion Arnold, but he had a really impressive pro day. He tested really well in the 40 and all the athletic traits. He looked very smooth, and his tape backs him up. I think the Eagles move up to get their guy at number 12 and address the secondary for their defense. Then at number 13, the Raiders don't move. They stay put and draft J.C. Latham. Plug him in right away at that right tackle spot to have him on one side and you have Colton Miller on the other side. I kind of wanted to go defensive back here because they only really have Jack Jones there. That was very impressive. But I'm sticking with J.C. Latham. I think he is slowly climbing up a lot of draft boards. And here, it makes too much sense for the Raiders. Get everything in place for a future quarterback at some point. Take a hit this year, and next year you can start really going in on a quarterback and be one of the best teams best suited to draft or acquire a quarterback in some manner next year. But they go offensive line. At number 14, I have Fashanu, the offensive tackle from Penn State, going to New Orleans. Not too much to think about here. Ryan Ramczyk, his injury, Trevor Penning not panning out the way that they hoped. I think it makes too much sense here for the Saints, and with the value that they have here, I don't think anyone's looking to trade up. This seems to be the consensus pick all over across the NFL that the Saints would make. Then, to round it off here with 15 and 16, the Colts have a little bit of a surprise here. They're drafting Xavier Worthy, in my opinion. Recent reports linking Worthy to them is intriguing. They think about addressing secondary, which would have been another option for them. With Terrion Arnold still on the board, it is definitely intriguing, but their secondary is young. That was the problem with them. I don't think adding another younger guy would really help. Even if he's great, I think Terrion Arnold's great, but I think a veteran like a Stephon Gilmore, a Justin Simmons would help them out more. And they also need a eye-catching wow player that on offense that could really bring people in. And Xavier Worthy, he broke the combine record in Indianapolis this year with that 40 record. He stays in Indianapolis. It seems like good things happen on that field for him. He stays and plays with the Colts. And Anthony Richardson coming back, bringing in a weapon like him with the kind of arm that he has, I think it would be a no-brainer to combine him with Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce on the offensive side of the ball. And the last pick of this segment, I went with Troy Fautanu for the Seattle Seahawks. They've been rumored with defense, secondary, and things like that, but I think offensive line still remains their biggest need. They reunite, oddly enough, Fautanu with their offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, who was the offensive coordinator at Washington. He is also able to play offensive guard because of his size. I mentioned that could be an option for him. Pretty realistic because the Seahawks lost Damian Lewis and Evan Brown this year. So to put Fautanu for him to be able to play one of these positions makes it more convincing to me that they would draft him at 16, and getting the value for a great offensive lineman at that pick is a no-brainer as well. So that rounds off this first segment, picks 1 through 16. Now I'm going to go to a quick break right now, the last break of the show, and on the other side, I'm going to get to the other half of the mock draft and finish it off with picks 17 through 32. So stick around and find out how I end the first round in just a few seconds.